Was it show jumping or was it bowling this week? It was an Uno reverse card with field strength, after the typically stronger Europeans were weaker than the Americans. Although it didn't help the huge scores in Washington, which led to an only 5-horse jump-off, while Helsinki fared much better in the Tamer World Cup in Finland. Horse Bytes is presented by FLAIR Equine Nasal Strips. Prevent, protect, perform. Welcome to Horse Bytes, your 5 and 10 5-star show jumping, all in just 10 minutes. It was another week of typical indoor jumping. Small rings, tight turns, lots of fault, and horses looking a bit green at the start of the winter season. World Cup jumping always comes at you hard. Horses have spent all summer in giant outdoor arenas, and now they are in cramped indoors, and it's a different game. You see a lot of scope issues and even spooks from horses that don't typically struggle. They need to find power from a more compressed stride, where outdoors they can just use their speed to clear the fences. And with the crowd right up against the rail in an environment where you can hear a pin drop, noise can play a large role in concentration. This week, we saw a big dichotomy between two events in Europe and the USA, despite both courses having a time allowed of 72 seconds. Helsinki was almost a bit too simple of a course, especially given the weaker field strength that saw 13 make it into the competitive jump-off. Robert Whitaker took an unlikely win on his big lumbering horse Vermento, beating out the more nimble Diallo Blue PS and Kevin Stout and Steve Gerda and Isminka. While Washington was, to be honest, a brutal class, albeit super entertaining, that saw an incredibly high faults and almost a quarter of the class retiring. The trailblazer of Rodrigo Pessoa and Major Tom eventually took the win over Katie Dinan and Out of the Blue SCF and Kristen Vanderveen and Bull Run's Jira. Do you guys remember my famous chestnut mare, Lizzie Mary? Well, did you know that she had EIPH and was a bleeder, like so many sport horses out there?
EIPH results when small blood vessels deep in the lungs rupture, causing red blood cells to spill into the airways during intensive exercise.
Well, I never rode her without a FLAIR equine nasal strip.
Listen to the horse's breathing. Close your eyes for a second and just tune into the horse and listen.
See? I'm going to line up the point with the tops of the nostril. So you want to keep it hinged like that. Okay, and then maybe do it through the nostril too. Put your hand in the nostril and then
Yeah.
Think about when you exercise, that suction of inhaling. You want to make that as easy as possible and bring fresh air in to help cool you off. There are only two things that are scientifically proven to help with bleeding: Lasix, which we're not allowed to use in competition, and FLAIR equine nasal strips. Look, it's really simple. The product actually works, so why not use it?
Think about your upper body, use your eye. Turn through, good.
I used it all the time, and now I'm encouraging my daughter and the next generation to use FLAIR equine nasal strips. Let's talk about Washington first, because it was a doozy. Literally a brutal class. I felt like I was watching horses going bowling and not show jumping, although I was sufficiently entertained. And to be frank, I'm not blaming Nick Granite, the course designer, because I sort of thought it was a fair course. And the field strength was strong, certainly stronger than the Western European League, which is not the norm. Multiple Olympians, top horses, but the class jumped like shit. Now, Washington isn't the easiest ring with rounded ends and no corners, but the time was fair. The jumps didn't look huge, but with two doubles and a triple, it was considerably challenging. Shockingly, we saw many hard rubs without the jumps falling. Maybe that's because the crowd was so sparse and everything echoed in the indoor, or maybe there were some deep cups, but all in, only 5 made it into the jump-off and saw Rodrigo Pessoa and Major Tom clock in their first ever 5-star meter 60 victory. 50% of the clears came within the first 6 riders. So early on, the course looked almost too simple, but after that, we only saw 2 more clears throughout the rest of the class, and none came in the second half. Shane Sweetnam came in with the highest win chance of 19%, while the eventual winner only had a 3% win chance. 8 retired of the initial 33 competitors, and some of the strongest pairs finished well into double digits, with 16 and 20 faults being surprisingly common. McLean Ward, Shane Sweetnam, Richie Vogel, Connor Swale, Abdel Said, etc. all faltered majorly, with rails coming all over the place. The first jump fell a lot. The Liverpools were brutal, especially the Lugano Oxer before the triple. That golden plank that we've seen for weeks at North American shows continued to fall consistently, and the Oxer by the ingate rode really delicately, short out of the corner and quite wide, so many people rubbed it or knocked it down. And lastly, the last jump also proved super difficult after the long four off the last double that caught out Ken Farrington for his only fault and Skylar Wireman, who lost her stirrup jumping out of the double and couldn't get down the long line. Luckily, Katie Dinan's horse helped her out. Take a look at this huge stretch.
So it should be okay now, he's been extended.
She's good. Katie Dinan.
The jump off was less exciting and saw an unusual finish, with the first proving to be the best. Rodrigo put in a solid time and certainly put the pressure on that eventually no one could best. Katie Dinan's round was lovely, but considerably slower and saw her unable to take the repeat win from last year, while Kristen van der Veen gave it a real go, but turned in way too tight to the double and couldn't clear A. Have a listen to Rodrigo's thoughts on the day after taking the second leg of the North American League, as he now tops the standings.
Yes, he was unbelievable. First round, he jumped incredible. I was lucky on the 9th jump. He had a hard rub, but after that, he was really perfect. And I thought, going first, it's not great, but if I do my plan, do my numbers, and then see what happens. But I'm really delighted with him tonight.
Helsinki, on the other hand, is really far away from everything, perhaps a major factor in why the field strength was a bit weaker. Many riders treat Oslo and Helsinki as like this mini 2-week tour of Scandinavia for the start of the World Cup season, so it's no surprise that 29 of the 35 riders who jumped this weekend were also in Oslo last weekend. Although we saw some top riders in Steve, Martin, Yuri, Marlon, Peter, etc., they were mostly on younger, less experienced horses. The course wasn't too complicated and left little room for interpretation. Beyond the one line that could either be jumped in a 7 or 8 strides, the distances were pretty fixed. It was mostly about track and execution rather than choice. As long as people stayed in a bit for the 5 strides to the triple, that worked out well, but if they went too wide or too direct, problems ensued for the likes of Philip Schultz-Topoff, Dermot Lennon, and Alex Rago, whose horse Sole Mio made a stutter step and jumped through C in this super awkward fashion. As long as riders had enough impulsion to the gold oxer off of the 7 or 8, they were able to clear it, but the wide jump certainly caught out plenty of riders like Max Kuhner, Katarina Romberg, Jens Fredriksson, and Caroline Rehhoff Peterson. As long as the riders caught the triple bar on the forward distance, the 4 was simple, although we saw some proper problems there, including Harry Allen's Calculatus, who jumped so high and landed so shallow he unsuccessfully attempted to do 5 strides. Somehow, the placement of the triple bar off the turn led to quite a few desperate distances where Jeremy Sweetnam and Peter DeVos were both crazy long at it. Going off statistics, we often see the first in the ring and the first after the break jump clear, and Helsinki saw exactly that, with Amanda Landeblad and Verkilly blazing the trail early on and Peter Fredriksson following suit after the midway drag break. With a big crowd in attendance, the rather mundane first round gave way to an exciting jump-off with a baker's dozen going head-to-head. If you saw the start list for the jump-off, you likely wouldn't have chosen Robert Whitaker and Vermento for the win. Yeah, Robert won this class 5 years ago on a different horse, and yeah, him and Vermento won a 5-star earlier in the summer, but in a tight indoor, with the likes of Kevin Stowe, Steve Gerdaha, Peter DeVos, Marlon Zanatelli, even Peter Fredriksson jumping, you certainly wouldn't think the big, slower stallion would be able to outmaneuver the field. But with precise execution and a big stride covering the ground, Whitaker and Vermento were the clear winners, outperforming the rest by over half a second and had the fastest time even compared to the 4 falters. Overall, round 2 for the 2 main World Cup leagues saw no shortage of action. Time wasn't much of an issue for either course, lots of 4 falters in Helsinki, lots of 16 falters in Washington. Jump 1 was difficult in both classes, and we saw unforced errors from the riders across the board. Most notably, however, was Daniel Coyle's random attempt to leave a stride out where an extra stride existed, showing us all that the top riders are human after all. Next time, don't feel too bad when you pop chip, because it happens to the best of us. In the end, I'd give Helsinki a 6.3 for mediocre show jumping and Washington a 6.4, certainly way more entertaining, but with no atmosphere, you can't give either much above average. Well, that's a wrap on this week's top highlights, and stay tuned next week for more show jumping out of Mexico and Monterrey and the third leg of the Western European World Cup League out of Lyon. But before you go, check out the wildest moment from the week when we saw a sheep and little Bo Peep attempt some show jumping. Make sure to subscribe and follow along all the action as it unfolds here on Horse Bytes, your 5 and 10 5-star show jumping, all in just 10 minutes.